Well, I definitely promised a longer vid. If you're watching, thanks for checking this out. In this one, I'm going to go over more aspects of each team specifically. Wow, to think this team was once 10-4. This team has fallen hard, and the reason is easy to diagnose. Tua Tagovailoa. He's had 2 official concussions and possibly even a third. If he didn't even play another down of pro football, I wouldn't blame him at all. The Dolphins should have enough talent to get by. At least that's what I would say if Teddy Bridgewater is okay. His finger's also injured, and if he doesn't start, that leaves Skylar Thompson. Against the Bills, the Dolphins may have too many injuries to put up a fight. If the Bills are on and focused, this could get ugly very fast. The Ravens are in a similar predicament to the Dolphins before them. They are ripe with injuries. Lamar Jackson has been dealing with a PCL sprain for over a month now, and if he can't start, you're stuck with the dollar store version of Lamar in Tyler Huntley, if you're lucky. It's unknown if he'll play after not playing in Week 18. If he does, the Ravens have a chance. Their defense is still good, which is what separates them from the Dolphins. Still, unless the Bengals fall asleep at the wheel, there really isn't much hope. The Chargers have a good offense, I'll give them that. Justin Herbert is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but their defense is not up to the standard it should be with all the talent. I also worry about their coach. Brandon Staley is quickly proving to not be a good NFL coach. His decision to keep his starters in last Sunday led to the injury of Mike Williams and wrist injury for the rest of his team. He also tends to make some poor moves with the clock, so I would expect that to rear its ugly head. Considering this team, I could easily see Jacksonville beating them by a massive playoff joke. Speaking of, nice little turnaround for last year's Tank Bowl winners. Trevor Lawrence took the second half of this year and blossomed into a much better quarterback. Who would have thought that having a competent coach, and yes, Doug Peterson may not be the best, but he is still competent, would help him develop instead of Urban Meyer? Seriously, with how good the Jags have been down the stretch, they could pull an upset or two as a young and hungry team. They have a decent defense with a top 10 scoring offense. And keep in mind, this is with a huge midseason slump that saw them go 1-6 between weeks 4 and 10. I would not be shocked to see them beat the Chargers. Now we're starting to get to the big boys. The Bengals have a very nice offense led by Joe Burrow. Seriously, if not for Mahomes and a few consistency issues recently, I'd be ready to crown him the best quarterback in the NFL. They also have a good defense, which should be boosted with some key players returning from injury. They look like one of the best teams in the AFC, but I can't help but remember what happened in the Super Bowl last year. Will their blocking be their downfall again? If they could overcome it, they could easily make my prediction of the Chiefs winning incorrect. I wish I could talk about how their offense has a ton of power. I wish I could talk about how their defense can hold almost anyone down. I wish I could speak about how they're finally going to right the wrongs of the 90s and win their first Super Bowl. But there are 2 key factors I can't ignore, being their propensity to underachieve and them losing Von Miller. There are certain games where the offense just goes flat and Josh Allen throws picks, and they happen a bit too much for me to be head over heels in love with this team. The other major thing was losing Von Miller. It turns out the 33-year-old still had plenty left in the tank, leading the team in sacks at the time of his injury, and the Bills just haven't been quite the same without them. They're still good, but they're just a tick behind the best teams. This team has the highest ceiling of any team in the AFC. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback, in my opinion, and if you feel he's not the best, he's still in your top 2 or 3. The Chiefs' offense simply needs to show up, and this team can take over games for weeks at a time. When the offense takes a nap, however, it hasn't been good, as in losing to the Indianapolis Colts bad. Their only other losses were to the Bills and Bengals, so there really should be no reason for their offense to sleep for those potential matchups. If this team doesn't choke spectacularly, they're my pick for the AFC. Regardless of how the season ends, it should still be considered a success. The Seahawks have a playoff spot, a top 5 pick, and a young defense that should get better in time. Possibly even a quarterback of the future if Geno Smith can fix some of the flaws he had in the second half of the year. Having said that, the young defense is still too young to handle the big boys, and that's exactly what they're getting in the 49ers. The Seahawks don't have much of a chance, but hey, Pete Carroll's deal with the devil to keep his job is working wonders for the team so far. The Giants have been overachievers in every sense of the word, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Overachieving simply means you punch above your weight and are able to ride the wave of success, even if you're not that good. Still, the Giants are a good team. Daniel Jones has cut his turnovers down this year and has played far more efficiently than in seasons past. Having a competent head coach will do that for you. This offense, however, runs through Saquon Barkley. If Barkley is stopped, the team can't do much. Still, playing spoiler to 1 or 2 of the top teams is a possibility, especially considering who they're up against. More on that later. You can look at this team in one of 2 ways. On one hand, you can salivate at all the talent on display. Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott combining forces with Tony Pollard, a good offensive line for them, and CeeDee Lamb just being great. Just ignore how Dak has been an interception machine this year and Elliott looks like he's running through quicksand. The defense has some nice pieces too, what with Michael Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence, and Trayvon Diggs. But this whole team feels more like individual pieces of a fancy sports car. Nice hood, a powerful engine, even some nice tires. There's a lot to like. But the mechanic? He doesn't even know how to use a hammer. The mechanic, or coach in this analogy, is Mike McCarthy. The sentient potato of a head coach is one of the worst in the league. Don't forget last year's performance against the 49ers. The quarterback run up the middle with no timeouts. This team will choke. It's not a matter of if, but when. I personally despise this team. Why won't they die already? Why can't more deserving quarterbacks like Josh Allen and Joe Burrow hoist Lombardi instead of Brady? He's already got a ton of those at home. Yet, as much as I hate to say it, the Bucs might be peaking at the right time. Offensively, they've looked much better in the past few weeks. The main catalyst for said improvement was Donovan Smith returning from injury to play left tackle. With the O-line improved, Brady has been able to do the thing again with his receivers. Even the defense has been improving a bit, as the secondary is now healthier than it's been since the bye. I see these guys playing spoiler to the Cowboys, and if it does happen, I won't be surprised, and I'll simply blame it on the devil pact Brady made all those years ago to defeat Father Time. The legendary head coach Bill Parcells once said, "You are what your record says you are." This has been proven false multiple times so far, and the Vikings might be the best example. How does a 13-4 team have a combined score of 374 to 288 in winning games? Over 13 games, that averages out to winning by an average of only a touchdown per game. Their losing game score? 50 to 139. So when they win, it's usually only by one touchdown, and when they lose, it averages out to 3 touchdowns per game. I could also cite how horrific Kirk Cousins is against pressure, which is worrying when his right tackle is out, how they were once down 33-0 against the Colts, who were a tire fire for most of the year, how Dalvin Cook hasn't been as dominant as in years past, or how their defense is somehow tied for third worst in the NFL in scoring and second worst in yards, etc., etc. Essentially, the Vikings are incredibly overrated, and I could easily see them losing to the Giants. On the other side of the defensive spectrum, a top 2 defense in terms of yards and the best scoring defense leads the way for the 49ers. Offensively, the team has had an interesting season. Trey Lance started the season and looked raw, but then he got injured, leading to Jimmy G playing. He did okay, but then he also got injured, leading to the reign of Brock Purdy, aka Mr. Irrelevant of this year's draft. His play has been outstanding so far. It remains to be seen if he can take his team through the playoffs, but if he can, there's little stopping this impressive team from reaching the Super Bowl, with Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel both leading the way. There's little that can stop this team when it's on. One of the hottest starts for any team has led to them crashing back to earth in spectacular fashion. If Jalen Hurts can make it back to his team in time for the game, then this team has a chance. Hurts was spectacular prior to his injury. That's the biggest concern for the team, as their defense is still spectacular and their offense can light anyone up. The biggest key, however, is Lane Johnson. Arguably the best right tackle in the NFL for years now, the Eagles have been 2 completely different teams if Johnson's in the lineup or not. If he's in and healthy, the Eagles could become the team to beat. But they are a team of ifs. If Jalen Hurts can come back, if Lane Johnson is healthy, if they can play up to their potential, if they're able to not choke, etc., etc., it's difficult to properly gauge them until we see the injury report. They could choke or they could go the distance. Either is honestly possible. As previously mentioned, I'm still going with the 49ers in Kansas City. It feels like there's a big gap between the Super Bowl contenders and the fringe teams this year, so there is plenty of opportunity for chaos. All we can do now is watch the games, I guess. Thank you all for watching.